Hello, everyone. Welcome to the RAISE seminar. I am Susana Otálvaro, a research assistant at the Inter-American Development Bank. And on behalf of the RAISE team, I want to thank you all for coming to this session. Today, we are having Lucas Marín, who is an economist from Universidad de los Andes and a research assistant at the Center for Security and Drug Studies at the same university. He has worked at the School of Government and the Center for Economic Development Studies at the Universidad de los Andes, and his research focuses on political economy issues, in particular on identifying the effects of drug policy interventions on violence in the territory. Today, he will present his work, The Killing of Social Leaders, an Unintended Effect of Colombia's Illicit Crop Substitution Program. The dynamics is as follows. We are going to have 40 minutes of his presentation, then we will open a 10-minute space for Q&A. But if you have a clarifying question, do not hesitate to address it. You can do it by writing it on the chat, or you can raise your hand and we will let you speak. Thank you, Lucas, for being here with us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarah and Susana, for the organization of the seminar. I'm very glad to present my work here. So as Susana mentioned, today I will present my work on the effect of a crop substitution program in Colombia on social leader killings. Now, this is the structure of the presentation. I will start with the motivation right away. Mainly in drug-producing countries, the public policy implemented in these countries to face the illicit drug issue are composed by forced eradication, mainly through aerial spraying and alternative development programs. There is a vast evidence on the inefficiency of aerial spraying in reducing illicit crops, and there's also evidence of the likely effects of crop substitution in illicit crops cultivation. In terms of unintended consequences, there is as well a vast evidence of the unintended consequence of aerial spraying on violence, deforestation, and health issues. However, in terms of crop substitution programs, there is no evidence of unintended effects. However, these effects are theoretically related to effects on community members, as those actors are the one involved in the implementation of the policy. Colombia, I take Colombia for this paper because it is the country that cultivates more than 70% of coca crops, which is transforming cocaine, consumed in the US and Europe mainly. Additionally, there was a peace agreement between the Colombian government and the oldest guerrilla in the world in 2016. As a result of this peace agreement, there was the implementation of a crop substitution policy called the PNIS, which is the largest alternative development program that intends to incentivize the voluntary eradication of illicit crops in return for money transfers. To the moment, there is no an impact evaluation of the policy. However, there is evidence of two papers from Daniel Mejia and co-authors and Ladino and co-authors, in which they show that the announcement of the policy increased incentives to cultivate coca crops, and that's the intervention that explained the rise in coca cultivation in recent years in Colombia. This policy was announced in May 2014 by the FARC representatives and the government representatives, and it started its implementation in 2016. Parallelly to the issue of illicit crops and the peace agreement with the FARC, recently in Colombia since 2015, there was a high increase in social leader killings. These social leaders are human rights defenders mainly, and they're also in charge of the implementation of some policies at the local level in which they communicate between the communities and local authorities. These actors, following political science evidence, are fundamental for building local state communities in violence context. So most of these killings additional to the human cost of a killing, has a negative externalities as it reduces the capability of communities to communicate with local authorities, and it disincentivizes leadership. In terms of the evidence of the recent increase in social leader killings, there is some work of Juan Fernando Vargas and his co-authors, in which they show that there was a positive effect of the peace agreement and the FARC demobilization on social leader killings due to the fights for territorial control that happened between other armed groups in the territory that the FARC controlled prior to the announcement of prior to the ceasefire. Sorry. So in this paper, what I want to address is to continue exploring the unintended consequence of peace agreement, but to answer the main research question, the main research question that I want to answer with this paper is whether or not this alternative development program that was a result of the peace agreement caused an increase in political violence oriented against social leaders. So to have a brief recap of the Colombian context, in 1960s, the oldest Latin American guerrilla was formed. This is the guerrilla of the FARC. There was an armed conflict between the Colombian state and the FARC that lasted for more than 50 years. Many presidents and governments tried to reach a peace agreement, but the successful peace agreement between these two actors was reached in 2016. During the 80s, right-wing and left-wing groups were related to drug trafficking, and this was the period where there was a high increase in violence among these groups. Additionally, the peace agreement with the FARC was announced in 2012, but it was signed until 2016. And during these 4 years, there was a negotiation on the agenda that included a solution to illicit drugs. And as I mentioned before, in this framework of the negotiation, the PNIS was designed and it started its implementation in late 2016. So to empirically test the hypothesis of the effect of this alternative development program on social leader killings, I employed data from several sources. The first one is the data of social leader killings. In Colombia, there are multiple sources that report and that monitor this phenomenon. However, in a recent study from Bao and co-authors, what they show is that even if there are differences between sources, the trends that these sources are reporting are the same, statistically are the same. So the decision of choosing Somos Defensores, which is a NGO charge of the monitoring of this phenomenon, is because this is the longest series of data at the municipality level, and it was also employed in previous work. So I choose Somos Defensores as the main source of information because it is I have available data from 2005 to 2020, and the data is at the municipality level that enabled me to merge this data with other sources of information. As well, I can identify with this data the month in which each killing occurred. So this also enabled me to build a larger panel data set to increase the statistical power for further estimation. Through the Agency of Renovation of the Territory, I acquired the data on the implementation of the PNIS. So here is very important to mention that prior to implementation of the PNIS, there was a community agreement between the FARC, the government, and representatives of the community, normally related to coca crops. And I acquired the exact date in which each community agreement was signed at the municipality level. So I have the data on the monthly killing of social leaders and the exact date in which each community agreement of the PNIS was signed at the municipality level. So with these two sources of information, what I do is to build up panel data set at the monthly and municipality level to have a large panel data set to do the econometrical approximation. Additionally, I merged these monthly panel data set with other sources of information, such as the coca crops from the SIMSI, the municipality income that enables me to measure the institutional capacity of the municipality, armed group presence to the mission of electoral observation, and other municipality characteristics that I acquired from the SES municipality panel dataset. This dataset has a limitation, which is the aggregation at the municipality level. There is evidence that within a municipality, there are differences between districts in conflict dynamics, as Ana Arjona mentioned in several of her work. However, it is not possible to acquire data at the district level of all these variables. I have tried to acquire the exact district in which each killing occurred, but this information is not available, and in the short run will not be. So even if accounting for this limitation, well, the panel dataset has some advantages that enable me to estimate the effect of the policy on social leader killings. So in terms of the methodology, there are structural differences between Penis municipalities and other municipalities in the country that are structural and that could explain different trends in the evolution of social leader killings in time. Therefore, from all Colombian municipalities, what I do is to take a subsample of municipalities in which it is reasonably theoretically to compare the Penis intervention with municipalities that did not receive the policy. So what I do is to take potential beneficiaries of the Penis, which are municipalities that had coca crops prior to the announcement of Penis. So in my sample, all the municipalities were potentially beneficiaries of the policy, as they had illicit crops prior to the announcement of the policy, and the treatment is defined by those potential beneficiaries that effectively received the program from 2016 onwards. So this is the main selection of the sample. I will present some robustness checks in the results section. And additionally to these results, I explored heterogeneous effects through armed groups presence and coca leaf cultivation. So formally, this is the specification of the model, which is the event study model that in which the dependent variable is the rate of social leaders by 100,000 inhabitants of the municipality. And in order to control for potential results that are explained only by outliers, I define an additional dependent variable with a dummy that equals 1 when at least one social leader was killed in municipality M in each period. So those are the main two outcomes that I employed. The model includes municipality and period fixed effects, and a dummy variable that equals 1 from the period in which the Penis signed the community agreements onwards. The model includes also controls in the pre-treatment period interacted with year fixed effects to control for potential observable difference between the treatment and the control group, and the error term is clustered at the municipality level. In this event study strategy, one of the main assumption is to test whether or not there was an anticipation effect of the policy. So in this dynamic model, what I do is to face this identification assumption, testing if there was or there was not an anticipation effect, and this anticipation effect is measured through the first through the gamma estimates, and those gamma estimates should be statistically equal to 0 in order to attribute the effect to the policy. Additionally, this dynamic model enables me to measure the dynamic effect of the treatment in terms of not only to compute the average effect of the treatment, but also to compute the effect for each period after the treatment, and to explore in which horizon the effect is concentrated. As I mentioned, the selection of the sample could lead to some questions, because I choose only the 2013 to select the municipalities with coca crops. So I do 4 robustness checks to confirm that the results are independent from this decision. So the first one is moving back the year in which I select the sample. So not choosing 2013 as the year, but choosing 2012, 2011 through 2005. Additionally, I run a model selecting the municipalities if at least in 1 year between 2005 and 2013, they had a presence of coca crops. The third robustness checks is more exogenous in the selection of the municipalities, as I do not base the criteria in effective presence of illicit crops, but in the probability of having illicit crops. So there is a paper by Daniel Mejia and Pascual Restrepo in which they estimate the probability of having coca crops in function of the natural characteristics of the municipality. So I choose all the municipalities above the median in this index of probability to choose the sample. Lastly, I choose only municipalities which are PEDET. PEDET are municipalities in which the government prioritized to implement the policies of the peace agreement. So these municipalities are defined by law as municipalities with the higher poverty rates and mostly affected by the conflict. So in these municipalities, I have a sample in the treatment and the control group municipality with very similar characteristics as all of these municipalities where have a high poverty rates, are affected by conflict, and have coca crops. And the only difference between those two groups is that one of the treatment group received the policy and the control group did not. So here I present some observable differences between the treatment and the control group. As you can see, prior to the implementation of the policy and prior to the announcement of the policy, there are observable differences between the treatment and the control group. But what the methodology does is to control for these observable differences if the parallel trend assumption is accomplished. So all these.
Lucas, a quick question. Before doing the PDET robustness, did you reduce your sample? For example, you dropped all the main cities and all the stuff because the number is kind of small. So I just wanted to know how do you reduce the municipality sample? Because you don't have all the municipalities of the country. Okay. Se me bloqueó.
Now I think, are you listening there? Yeah. Okay. So could you repeat the question, Sarah, because I didn't hear it.
Sorry, how did you reduce the sample? Because you don't have all the municipalities. So I'm thinking maybe you dropped the main cities or something like that to have a similar sample before doing the robustness check with the PDET?
Yes. No, here in all the samples, and in the result that I will present, the municipalities are only those with the coca crops prior to the 2030. So it started with those sample of the entire municipalities on the country, because those were the municipalities that were potentially intervened through the PNIS. So in this table and in the model is just municipalities with coca crops prior to 2030. So here what the table presents, as I was mentioning, is the observable differences between the treatment and the control municipalities, but those differences are captured by the model and by the difference methodology when the parallel trend assumption is accomplished. And in this following figure is the main intuition of the paper, and this figure presents the evolution of social leader killing rates, and the bold line is the treatment group, and the dashed line is the non-penny municipalities, and the red vertical line represents the first community agreement of the PNIS. So prior to the red line, what we can see in this figure is that the evolution of the social leader killings rate was very similar in both groups. However, posterior to the red vertical line, there is a disproportionate increase in killings in PNIS municipalities. So the purpose of the paper and to motivate the methodology and the aim of the paper is to determine if this disproportionate increase is effectively caused by this intervention. So moving forward to the results in this table, I present the main results of the paper, in which I find a positive and statistically significant effect of the PNIS community agreements on the social leader killings rate and the probability of a killing. Additionally to the statistically significance of the effect, it's very important to compare the magnitude of the effect. So in terms, for example, of the probability, it is an increase in 1.5 percentage points in the probability of a killing in a month. But this 1.5 percentage point represents an increase in 167% of the probability of a social leader if we are comparing with the mean probability prior to the implementation of the policy. In terms of the rate, the effect is larger in magnitude, as it represents an increase in 550% in the rate comparing to the mean prior to the intervention. So in these graphs, I was mentioning the main assumption of this model is to test whether or not there were anticipation effects of the policy. And as you can see, prior to the implementation of the policy, which is represented by the red vertical line, there are no statistically significant effects. So this suggests that there is effectively the policy is the one that is causing the effect on social leader killings. However, these graphs could have a potential on power bias because there are several periods including in the estimation. So to address this comment, what I do is to restrict the sample for 6 months prior to implementation of the policy in order to do not have on power estimates. And what I find is that the effect is consistent because I do not find any significant effects prior to the implementation of the policy. In terms of robustness checks, I do not present here all the estimations. If you have any interest on those results, you can find it on the working paper. But the results are very similar for the ones I present in the main results, as the effect is of the same magnitude in the rate between 500% and 570%, and the probability between 156 and 178%. So these results are very consistent with the ones in the main results. In the robustness checks that I want to focus here is in the suitability index and in the PED exercises. The results are as well consistent, and the magnitude of the effects are consistent with the main results. And these two robustness checks, I think they're more convincing in terms of the argument that the selection of these two samples to the suitability index and through the PED municipalities is more exogenous to the dynamics and of social leader killings. So in terms of the heterogeneous effects, what I do is to subsample the panel in municipalities by coca crops. I mean, the number of acres of coca crops by municipalities and the presence of different armed groups. There is in the public opinion the idea that social leader killings is mainly related to drug trafficking and to coca leaf cultivation. So in terms of coca crops, what I do is to divide the sample in municipalities that are in the first tertile of coca crops, in the second, and in the higher tertile of coca crops, in order to see if there are differential effects by the quantity of coca crops in the municipality. And in terms of the R groups presence heterogeneous effects, what I do is to divide the sample in municipalities with a right-wing armed group presence, left-wing armed group presence, and municipalities that have at least 2 groups present in the municipality. So in terms of the coca crops heterogeneous effect, what I find is that the effect in the probability and the rate is concentrated in municipalities in the lower tertile. So in municipalities with low and intermediate level of coca crops, the penny is increasing the killing of social leaders. So these results could be hard to explain and hard to interpret in a first approach. However, when I explore the evolution of coca crops by tertiles, what we see in this figure is that the increase from 2014 onwards occurred in municipalities of the higher tertile of coca crops. Therefore, in the first and second tertile, there is no evidence of an increase in coca crops after 2014. And what the literature on political science and mainly of Ana Arjona suggests is that in municipalities where the community and the institutional quality is better, the expansion of illicit activities is very difficult for armed actors. So in these municipalities of the first and the second tertile, it is likely that the quality of the institution and the quality of the community association is better in a way that they can opposite the interest of armed groups to the increase of these illegal activities. However, as Ana Arjona mentioned in her work, the presence of this better quality institution and the presence of this opposition to illegal actors could drive and pressure illegal actors to attack violently civilians. So this is the main reason why I am finding an effect in the lower tertile of coca crops. So in these municipalities, one of their characteristics is the quality of their institution, the quality of civilian opposition to illegal actors that could explain this retaliation of illegal actors to social leaders. In terms of armed group presence, the results are very straightforward, as I find an effect in municipalities that have a presence of both armed groups. So this result is consistent with previous literature, such as the Juan Vargas and co-authors paper, in which they find that it is in municipalities where there are disputes for the territorial control that there is an increase in the killing of social leaders after the ceasefire with the FARC, and these results are oriented in the same direction. So to conclude this presentation and recapitulating the result that I present, what I find is a positive and significant effect of this crop substitution program on social leader killings. Additional to the statistically significance, there is an economic significance of a large magnitude effect on social leader killings. The rise in the probability and the rate of social leader killing is driven by municipalities with higher quality institutions, with a higher opposition of civilians to armed groups' interest, and with presence of several armed actors. So the results are mainly explained by these two channels of dispute for territorial control and opposition of civilians to armed group interests. In terms of policy recommendations, I think these policies oriented to municipalities affected by conflict and municipalities with illicit activities is very important to have an integrated approach and a regionally oriented policy design, as these policies require a massive presence and coordination of governmental institutions in the implementation of these policies. Without an institutional coordination and intelligence analysis, it is very unlikely that alternative development programs reach their expected results. There are security systems and there are policies with security system and intelligence mechanism that could guarantee that the intervention will not increase violence dynamic in municipalities that are being intervened. So in terms of crop substitution programs, the main recommendation of this paper is to design and to implement a security analysis and intelligence mechanism to prioritize municipalities with some characteristics that enable the policy and the program to reach their expected results and to do not expose more communities and social leaders involved in the implementation of this policy. Lastly, one of the main things that I would like to do is to test this hypothesis in other crop substitution programs. There is a crop substitution program which is called Formalizar para Sustituir, and I want to determine whether or not the effects or these unintended effects are structural to crop substitution programs, or if there are any particularities of the PNIS that explain the results that I am finding. So thank you very much for the time. I am open to Q&A if you have any.
Thank you very much, Lucas, for your presentation. So does anyone have a question? Please raise your hand.
I have a small question. When you were talking about the effect when you have it's like kind of smaller producers of coca, medium size and large size, this first, second, and third tertile, you were saying that the institutional structure played an important role to make possible the killing of social leaders, given the fight for the territory and those things. You have in your data set information about the municipality capacity, fiscal capacity, I guess, for what you said at the beginning. Could you try to measure the mechanism you're trying to exploit in that argument?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Susana, for the question, and I think it's a very relevant question, and I haven't thought it really. So I think it is very interesting to test whether or not if there are heterogeneous effects by the capacity, by the fiscal capacity at least of the municipalities. So thank you very much for the question.
I have a clarification question. So when you presented your balance table, you had some unbalanced variables before the treatment, and I wanted to know first if you control by those, and second, if you have a balance table for the PDET municipalities, because you might think those municipalities look much alike. And the other thing is, have you tried to done no, that's it. So the thing is, the PDET municipality might have kind of a threshold. So maybe you can play with that one, the threshold on selecting the PDET and also selecting or you just work with the 270 PDET and just treatment and control. I would like to know about that robustness check.
Perfect. Yes. What I include in the model is some observable variables, that the ones that I present in the balance table, and I took them at the baseline. So they're variables measured in 2013 that are interacted with a fixed effect with year fixed effects. So those observable differences are included in the model. I haven't done the balance table just at the PDET level. And as you mentioned, those differences should not be present in that subsample of the big sample. So I think it is very interesting, and the selection of the PDET is very robust, because the difference between that treatment and that control is very marginal in terms of the implementation of the policy. So in the control group, in the PDET robustness check, what I have is municipalities with high poverty rates affected by conflict and illicit crops presence. And in the treatment, I have those same characteristics and an additional marginal characteristic, which is the implementation of the policy. But in the rest of observable and unobservable, the difference between the treatment and the control should not exist.
Thank you, Lucas. Does anyone have a question? Felipe, please. The floor is yours.
Lucas. I have one question. So to be assigned to the PENIS program, you need to have like any amount of coca, or you have to be like above some threshold or something like that?
Yes, the selection of the PNIS municipalities, I try to understand deeply how these municipalities were selected, but in the theory there are some rules, but in the practice it did not happen that way. So in theory, the PNIS should be implemented only in PED municipalities and should aim in municipalities with larger coca crops. But as you saw, there are municipalities in every third tile of coca crops. So in the practice, what the implementation focused on was mainly driven by a random selection of municipalities, because they went to municipalities in which there was easy to access due to FARC relationships with the community, and they have a very limited time constraint because the government was about to end, and a very limited budget constraint. So what I understand by several interviews that I did to functionaries involved in the selection of the municipalities is that at the end they just choose the municipalities in which it was easy, and they have the budget and they have the time to select. But there was no any observable or reasonable characteristic to select the municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else has a question? Well, thank you very much, Lucas, for your presentation today. Remember that we will post a thread on your presentation and also on the YouTube channel, the record of this presentation.
Perfect. Yes, and just to complement to Felipe's question to finish the seminar, that's what I think, that the analysis and the intelligence analysis is very important, because just by not intervening municipalities with presence of two armed groups, the effect will not exist. If you see in the heterogeneous effects of armed group presence, if you take out of the sample those municipalities in which there was presence of two armed groups or more armed groups, there will not be any statistical effect. So that's why the selection and the analysis previous to implementation of the policy is very important to avoid these potential unintended effects in municipalities that are being intervened.
Can I
thank you.
ask a question? So, but you don't think that the timing of like the implementation of the PNIS is like random or something like that? I'm not saying that the municipalities that are being selected, it's random, but like the timing on when they are being selected. Don't you think like that's like some kind, you could exploit some kind of randomness over there? Like on the timing on when the municipalities start the PNIS program, but not like which municipalities were actually selected.
But yes, I don't know if I'm getting the question right, but the event study enables to explore this randomness in the timing of the intervention, because I'm considering as control all those municipalities that are not being treated until the period in which they're treated. So there I am exploring those municipalities as control to the moment in which the treatment begins. And there is differences in the treatment, in the timing in which they're being intervened. But I don't know if I'm getting the question right.
We can talk offline if you want, but like I'm asking this because I read like a paper a year ago that uses closures of Social Security Administration offices in the US. Like the offices that are closed are not random, like they follow like some kind of criteria, but like the authors say that the timing of the closures, you can treat it as random, and they exploit that in an event study. So maybe you can use that to get like some robustness check or something like. But we can talk offline if you want.
Yes, perfect. Yes, Felipe, thank you very much. I will be. It will be very nice to talk, and if you can send me the paper you are mentioning, it will be very nice. I will appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We will see you in 2 weeks, and we will confirm with our presenter. Have a nice day. Thank you, Lucas, for this amazing presentation.
Thank you very much.
Bye.